Ways, relatively small ways in the context of the enormity of what's happening, that Scotland can help sending these essential medical supplies to people who are fighting on the front line, likely to be wounded and injured. So what will go from here, initially about 500,000 medical supplies, items of equipment, ventilators, bandages, things that on the front line are badly needed. So the team here have been working really hard to get all of this ready to go. I heard somebody from the UK government say yesterday that the reason for such a limited approach is that they think that people fleeing Ukraine will prefer to stay closer to home. Now, that sounds to me like just passing the buck to other countries. It also seems a bit counterintuitive. If they think people will want to come to the UK, which I don't agree with, then it would seem to me that there is less reason to have a limited approach to welcoming people here. This is something that is of a magnitude that we're only going to begin to grasp in the days and weeks to come, and every country has a moral obligation here to play its full part, but there's also a practical need, because no one country, no small number of countries alone is going to be able to deal with this. It will take all countries to come together and be part of a collective response. The UK is not doing anywhere near enough, and I think the system that is in place of having people fleeing the terror in Ukraine, spending hours and hours and hours on arduous journeys, then having to jump through bureaucratic hoops is unconscionable. And we only have to compare the 50 or so visas that have been granted for entry to the UK so far with more than 1,000 Ukrainians who have already managed to enter the Republic of Ireland, a country much, much smaller than the UK. And what Ireland is doing is what the UK should be doing. It's allowing people in and then doing the paperwork once they have managed to get that refuge and sanctuary here. So I think if the UK government does not significantly change its approach here, then increasingly there are people going to be looking at the UK and concluding that on a humanitarian level it is not doing nearly enough to help those fleeing horror and terror in Ukraine. We already have 1.5 million people who have been displaced. That number, sadly, is only going to grow in the days and weeks ahead. All countries must step up and fully play their part, and the UK is not yet doing so. Horrified by what is happening to Ukraine right now, and we want to do everything we can to assist. Obviously, first and foremost, in addition, of course, to the international pressure on Putin through sanctions, we need to make sure we are opening our doors to those fleeing the horror in Ukraine and needing refuge and sanctuary. On that front, I've been pretty blunt in my view that the UK government is not doing nearly enough. I've heard stories today from members of our Ukrainian community seeking to get family members here and being met with a wall of bureaucracy. That should not be happening. So I would repeat my appeal to the Prime Minister directly today to open not just the hearts of the UK to those needing sanctuary, but to open the doors of the UK, to allow people to come to the UK and then deal with any paperwork afterwards. That's what the Republic of Ireland is doing, it's what countries across the European Union is doing, and it is what the UK urgently needs to do now. I don't stand by and simply watch this happen. I do also think with every day that passes right now, there is a need to ensure that the world is doing the maximum it can to equip Ukraine militarily. Obviously, there is an ongoing discussion about providing fighter jets to the Ukrainian government. All of that is really important, but it is also really urgent because the death and destruction is being visited on Ukraine on a daily, hourly basis right now. So across all of these things, the world needs to learn the lessons of history, but also recognise its obligations in the here and now. Welcome, as I said earlier on, the movement. We appear to have heard from Priti Patel in the Home Office this morning. As I understand it, and I'm still, when I came to the Chamber, was still trying to absorb all of the details of it. As I understand it, Ukrainians with a Ukrainian passport will be able now to apply for a visa, but only through the family route, which is the only route open right now, online, rather than have to go to a visa application centre. That is movement, and I understand that for them the biometric processes will be completed when they come to the UK. But it is still requiring a visa application process, and that is not good enough. We need to waive that process, allow people to get here
and then do the paperwork after that. That's not just the humanitarian thing to do, that is what other countries are doing as well. Finally, Presiding Officer, we hope we will have confirmation over the next couple of days from the UK Government of the opening of the community sponsorship route. That has been overseen by Michael Gove rather than the Home Office. I've had constructive discussions with Michael Gove in the last couple of days about this. The Scottish Government has put a proposition to him and his officials that would allow the Scottish Government, in partnership with the Scottish Refugee Council, with COSLA, effectively to run that scheme here in Scotland so that we can make sure people coming through it get the right support, because I think the vast majority of people in Scotland want to welcome them with open arms.
Well, so that was just a little snapshot there of Nicola Thinlips over the duration of the past 13 or 14 days or so. From the minute this conflict in Ukraine began to intensify and we started to see an outpouring of people, or women and girls, as she likes to refer to on a regular basis, she was quick to jump onto every platform available, whether that be the Parliament itself or a wee podium reading scripts, or whether it be jumping around all the media stations to give her 2 cents. From day dot, it's been constantly reminding us all that the UK isn't going far enough, isn't going fast enough, isn't doing enough, and we should be doing all that we can to ensure as many people come here as possible. And going so far in some instances to even suggest that there should be no limit whatsoever, you know, as if it's she's the arbiter of who comes into this country, you know. Speaking on behalf of the UK, she should know her place. That said, I'm not really here to get into that sort of discussion in this video. It's just really to highlight how fucking insufferable she's been. And like, I'm not making this video purely on the basis of the fact that I genuinely resent this woman with near enough every fibre of my being. I just think she's a toxic bitch. But it's the fact that, well, I'll get to my point. Right, so this was one of the many examples of things that are just fucking irritable with her whole standpoint on this. Right, she says here that she confirms IndyRef 2 next year despite Ukraine invasion, and she said that she wanted an independent Scotland to be a country which welcomes refugees, in an apparent dig at the UK government, who've been criticised for the lacklustre response. Right, and then this was in reference, to an interview that she did with LBC, and she was asked if current events in Europe had influenced her thinking on the referendum timetable, due to Ian Blackford being questioned on it a few days prior, and his response kind of left many to wonder what was going on. However, she says that we right now should be reminded above all else how lucky we are to live in a free democracy where we can put forward our case for political constitutional change, argue that case passionately, whatever our views on that might be, and trust people to decide. We previously told her support for independence is neck and neck. Sorry, that's not her. But she then says down here that the independence for Scotland would allow the country to play a bigger role in the humanitarian response. And then she says, well, down here, this is where she's actually quoted, I support independence for a whole variety of reasons, but one of the motivations for my support for independence is to see Scotland play a bigger role, albeit as a small country, in building a more peaceful world, to be a progressive, constructive, international partner, to be a progressive country that welcomes refugees. Yeah, so right off the fucking bat, I mean, I've lost count of how many times in the clips that I played and all the articles that are about it as well, or the things that she says on a daily basis, she keeps making references to the international stage, or building a peaceful world, as if Scotland's going to have some vital and pivotal role on the international stage, moral obligations, obligations in general, all this references to obligations, as if we're all obligated somehow. Then she says down here, and to see Scotland as a place of sanctuary, a country that sees the benefits we stand to gain from having people come here and make a contribution to our society. So again, there's these references to contributions. Yeah, I'm fucking sick hearing the term contribution coming from this thin-lipped monkey's mouth. Nonetheless, she finishes off here by saying, and actually all these issues right now I think are brought into sharp focus by the tragedy that is unfolding in Ukraine. Right? So there you go, folks. Vote for independence so we can be a progressive country that welcomes refugees, and you know, we will build a more peaceful world. Yeah, so we will. Also, as well as I alluded to, she came out at one point and said, made reference to the fact that we shouldn't even be limiting the amount of refugees that could come here. So hypothetically, or theoretically speaking, of course, that could, in turn, it's not going to happen, but it would be made possible for just an unlimited stream of people to come here. You know, so there's that. But all the way back on the 1st of March, Nicola Thinlips wrote her first of 3 letters that have been published so far to the UK government. And she says here that it is vital that a rapid, safe and legal route, or routes I should say, be established immediately, cooperating with our international partners wherever possible. Safe and legal, Sustainable Development Goal 10.7, ring any bells? Safe, legal, regular, orderly migration. However, the letter actually says down here, I might as well just read a part of that. Sorry. On Sunday, you said that your government would be very generous with people displaced by the invasion of Ukraine. I appreciate that this is a fast-moving situation, but the confusion over the last few days about the government's offer is putting people at risk and causing distress. We cannot turn our back on the people of Ukraine during what is arguably the most serious moment the world has faced since the end of the Cold War, and one of the most dangerous since World War II. I offer you to offer immediate refuge and sanctuary where necessary for those who may be displaced. She then says down here, I note the announcement of a community sponsorship route to be led by Michael Gove, with further details to be provided in due course. It is important that any proposal was developed at pace but in partnership with the devolved governments through meaningful collaboration, and I would ask for confirmation that the Department for Levelling Up will work with the government in developing this route prior to establishing further detail. However, I am concerned that this route will take time to establish and be limited in its scope. Scotland stands ready to offer refuge and sanctuary for those who may be displaced, as we did with the Syrian resettlement programme, which gave birth to many Africans coming over here who somehow managed to come under the banner of a Syrian resettlement programme, which saw all 32 local authorities in Scotland welcome Syrian families into their communities. There is still a need for such a programme, and I should be grateful to know as a matter of urgency whether you intend to offer one. If you do, the Scottish Government will work with local authorities here to support refugees to settle in Scotland, right? So bold, so brave. Finally, I call on the UK government to drop the Nationality and Borders Bill, which would effectively criminalise people from Ukraine or anywhere else entering the UK in order to seek asylum. Points made repeatedly during the bill's scrutiny at Westminster. We must stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, yada yada. Scotland has always played its part in providing sanctuary to those fleeing conflict and persecution. We stand ready to do so again. Do we, I? Okay. Then she wrote another letter, or she signed off on another letter anyway, on the 11th of March 2022, and it says down here, as we witness the worst humanitarian crisis in Europe since World War II, and more than 2 million Ukrainians now having fled since the Russian invasion, the UK must take action and respond fully with humanity and compassion. The desperation of those fleeing and displaced by the war in Ukraine are clearly distressing and heart-rending. The Home Secretary's announcement today, detailing the introduction of an entirely online application process for Ukrainian family members seeking to come to the UK without the requirement to attend a visa application centre, is a welcome step in the right direction, as is the decision to further extend the Ukrainian family visa scheme. It is clear, though, that it is not enough. It is neither reasonable nor morally acceptable to expect people fleeing war to go through complex bureaucratic processes in order to reach safety within the UK. Therefore, we urge you to follow the examples of European countries, including the Republic of Ireland, by waiving all visa requirements for any Ukrainian nationals seeking refuge in the UK, as well as implementing the temporary protection regulations. And then, of course, we get the usual push. Scotland stands in solidarity with the people of Ukraine and deeply wishes to provide them with practical support, aid and refuge. We are ready to provide to people in need right now. The government is already working with local authorities and the Scottish Refugee Council to make sure that our communities are ready to welcome refugees as soon as they are able to come here and ensure that they have the support that they need. More than a week after it was announced on the 1st of March, we urge you to set out the details of the humanitarian sponsorship pathway, including when it will open and confirmation that the government will provide the flexibility and the financial support needed to allow us in Scotland and communities across the UK to contribute. And then it says here, as a further demonstration of this solidarity, the following leaders of Scotland's political parties have co-signed this letter. Yeah, of course, the Tin Pot Parliament, they all agree. How bold, how brave, how beautiful, how stunning. Then, of course, this shit here. I fucking can't believe. I mean, there's just no level of embarrassment that this thin-lipped boot will not stoop to. She fucking defies belief, the fucking waffle she comes out with. So, this letter came out on the 13th, and it's a joint letter between her and the bellend who's in charge of Wales, Mark Drakeford. Further to our conversation this morning, where you and Richard Harrington set out the UK government's plan for a humanitarian sponsorship scheme, the Scottish and Welsh government committed to set out an offer on how we would like to support this initiative in Scotland and Wales. This offer is based on a desire to see our respective countries given maximum flexibility, and therefore able to take maximum responsibility to work with partners in the public, private and third sectors to support refugees. However, we want to repeat again that it is neither reasonable nor morally acceptable to expect people fleeing war to go through complex bureaucratic processes in order to reach safety within the UK. The government should be following the example of European countries, including the Republic of Ireland, by waiving all visa requirements for any Ukrainian nationals seeking refuge in the UK, as well as implementing temporary protection regulations. This proposal should therefore be taken in this context, and the Scottish and Welsh governments do not think the humanitarian sponsorship scheme goes far enough and raises some questions which have not yet been answered. We propose that the Scottish and Welsh governments act as the overall sponsorship for the scheme in Scotland and Wales. Fucking Jesus Christ, man. The phrase used on our call was super sponsor. In this context, a fair and proportionate number of refugees will be allocated to Scotland and Wales, and the Scottish and Welsh governments working with their partners would take forward the provision of accommodation, safeguarding and access to services as they have done successfully to support refugees in the past. On this point, we welcome Richard Harrington's positive reflections this morning about the very good and collaborative work done by the UK and devolved administrations on previous refugee resettlement schemes. You know, but since COVID started, the vast majority of so-called refugees, if you will, that have entered the UK have just been shoved into hotels. So was that the plan here for the Ukrainians, or are you going to put them into a temporary accommodation or accommodation in general? Then that begs, or demands its own questions. Because while all this grandstanding has taken place, while all this virtue signalling has taken place on a daily basis, I should say, from this thin lip arsehole and her party and the rest of the pricks in Holyrood, there's article after article coming out. For example, just today, is it this one? No. This one here. Councils failing to deliver social homes for 7,500 homeless children. Shelter Scotland says local authority leaders are failing children across the country. Shelter Scotland says, the charity is now calling on councils to step up and urgently tackle the deepening housing emergency ahead of May's elections. In Glasgow alone, there are 2,480 children in temporary accommodation, while 1,515 children in Edinburgh face the same situation. In Aberdeen, a household with children in temporary accommodation will on average spend 103 days before getting a permanent residence, while in Dundee that figure rises to 285 days. Then we can talk about the never-ending expansion to the council waiting lists for people. Homelessness in general, and take kids out of the equation. The list goes on of problems that are rife in Scotland when it comes to living conditions, but there's never any fucking mention, or at the very bare minimum, there's not the same level of prioritisation from thin lips as there is to getting as many people from foreign lands over here. Put this into context. If the UK decided not to let anybody from the Ukraine into the UK, these people would not lose out. It's not like their life depends on whether or not they can gain access to the UK. Therefore, to me, it screams out that this is one of two things, and I can't quite put my finger on it as far as she's concerned. There's either an ulterior motive for why she is so fucking hell-bent to lax every rule possible and import as many people here as possible, or it's just another classic Nicola Thin Lips debacle of grandstanding to no end, and to no avail for the most part. I don't know. I can't put my finger on what it is quite yet. Maybe in time we will find out, one way or the other. But it just begs belief that while all of this is happening in the background, she just sits fucking quiet and constantly goes on and on and on as if we have unlimited resources, unlimited space, ignoring and negating any fucking acknowledgement of, charity beginning at home. Are you going to house these people alongside our own? Are you going to start building houses Rapido style to house Ukrainian refugees as well as our own? Nah, of course you're fucking not. So, of course, with Michael Gove coming out in recent days, Sunday, is it this one? Sorry, so many tabs open, here, Michael Gove, he came out at the weekend to allude a bit further on this sponsorship scheme. Essentially, it's going to boil down to what it says here. The Levelling Up Secretary said people would be able to apply to sponsor refugees from tomorrow and should be matched with families by Friday. He said households in the UK will be paid £350 a month to host a refugee for at least 6 months, with local councils paid £10,000 per refugee to help them access local services, including education for their children. Right? So this is the scheme that's been implemented at present, or is on the pipeline to be implemented. But Sturgeon's kind of wanting to get these people here first, and then what? There's not really any elaboration in terms of that. But my question is, where are these people supposed to go? You know, it's very easy to stand and grandstand all fucking day long on virtue signal, but I don't really think any consideration is being taken into where these people are supposed to go. Where is that? Fuck's sake. For this to work, it is imperative that our governments have full access to data on Scottish and Welsh offers of accommodation in your proposed digital portal, and we will then assume responsibility for matching refugees to accommodation, including public sector, private sector and voluntary sector accommodation. We would like to understand more about the intended process for due diligence and checks and can see, for example, the value in a collaborative approach to the disclosure and barring service in England and Wales to ensure an expedited route for enhanced checks is possible. It is equally essential that all arrivals have access to public funds. Arrivals are exempt from the habitual residence test for accessing universal credit, and a per head tariff is provided to the Welsh and Scottish governments for the provision of integration support. You have asked us to provide an initial estimate of capacity. You will appreciate that it's very hard to give that without any of the aforementioned work being done on sourcing accommodation and matching individuals. Nevertheless, it would seem reasonable that as a first wave, Scotland should plan to support an equivalent number of Ukraine refugees as were settled under the Syrian scheme, so 3,000. But the difference between this scheme and the Syrian scheme, which gave birth to many Africans being over here under the banner of the Syrian scheme, as I've already said, is that the Syrians weren't placed into temporary accommodation or whatever it was, and then had to wait patiently until somebody decided to take them into their own home. So right off the fucking bat, we're backing a bit of a loser here, or backing ourselves into a corner. Where are these people supposed to go? We would build capacity from there for each country to take its fair and proportionate share of the total number of refugees entering the UK. Oh, it's fair and proportionate when it suits you, eh? There are significant risks around the suitability and scalability of the sponsorship model as you've described it, and our shared view is that there is considerable work still to be done on safeguarding and matching. We are confident we can deliver a comprehensive offer in Scotland and Wales in which incorporates contributions from private citizens and the third sector, but draws on the capacity of the wider public service and the experience of large-scale resettlement in the past. Fucking chair, by the way. Local authorities can and must play a vital role in supporting refugees seeking sanctuary in our own communities, both in the provision of accommodation and in access to services, and this needs to be properly funded by the UK government. We need urgent clarity in the funding position as soon as possible, as we are currently supporting capacity building. We are absolutely committed to playing our full part in responding to this crisis and are seeking the maximum flexibility to develop clear plans based on evolving what has worked in the past. With the Scottish and Welsh governments working with local authorities and other partners, are best placed to deliver and to ensure the arrangements put in place are safe, sustainable, of course, and offer true sanctuary to those fleeing war. As we indicated this morning, our support for this scheme is predicated on reaching agreement on this point. So, yeah, there's that. It's just, as I say, man. She said separately on the same day that she wants Scotland to play its full part in welcoming Ukrainians seeking sanctuary from war. The UK response so far has been beset with bureaucracy and red tape, when what is needed is humanity and urgent refuge for as many as possible. We're still waiting for full details of the proposed community sponsorship scheme. If the UK government is still unwilling to waive visa requirements, it is essential that the scheme works efficiently and effectively and allows people to come to the UK as quickly as possible. However, I'm very worried that if people have to be matched with an individual sponsor before even being allowed entry to the UK, it will prove slow and cumbersome. Therefore, that's why Nicola Phillips and Mark Drakeford have decided that they want to be the super sponsors, which in theory they are proposing that their governments act as the initial super sponsors to allow large numbers to come to our respective nations quickly. Oh, fucking hell. But again, no, what good is that if you can't find sponsors for them? And again, where they meant to go? Just slap them into this temporary accommodation, eh? Yeah. It's remarkable as well, though, that there's all this money that's been set aside to help these people when they do get here, whether it be the £350 a week or whether it be the money that's been offered up to council, local authorities and whatnot. I think it was like 10 grand or something, Michael Gove said. It might say it here. Local authorities being paid 10 grand per refugee to help them access local services, including education for their children. How the fuck can they pull that money out of their arse when it suits them, but they can't pull that money or additional money out of thin air to help people alleviate the issues that are going to occur with the so-called cost of living crisis? How the fuck can they not do that? Why is there so much prioritisation being placed on getting people to come over to the UK when they could quite easily go to one of the plethora of European nations? But there's nothing really on the same scale. There's not the same level of attention nor prioritisation being placed on helping our own when it comes to the problems we're about to face. No, let's just embrace an open door policy. Let's just continue to encourage as many people to come over here when we're not even acknowledging the issues we're all about to face. Manufactured, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely. You know, Patrick Harvey, he says it quoting for me, third in from the left. Ukraine war must not be used as a justification for more North Sea oil in production. Nicola Finlips saying something very similar. You know, they're both on the same page in that respect. But she said at First Minister's Questions, the last one previous, in a back and forth with Douglas Ross, something similar, but then went on to talk about the fact that in actuality this so-called crisis showcases why we need to speed up the processes moving away from, you know, reliance on oil and gas and all this shit. So, you know, we have energy in abundance, the UK-wide energy in abundance in terms of, you know, the North oil, you know, gas and all the rest of it, but now let's just focus on the life of wind turbines. Let's just hope there's plenty of wind there. But yeah, where was I? Sorry. Shit. Oh fuck! Now I've lost where I was at. Maybe this one. No, what the fuck? Like, oh, don't do this to me. Oh shit! What have I done? Oh no! I've earned it. Sorry, my bad. So this has obviously come out in the last few minutes, which is perfect timing essentially because I was coming at the end of my video. But Michael Gove's statement, this is Nicola Finlips on Twitter obviously, so far the UK government has not rejected the Scottish Government's super sponsored proposal, but frustratingly it has not yet confirmed formal agreement either, so we are not yet able to finalise the timescale / detail. I hope to speak to him later to push this forward. Oh, I'm sure you fucking will, alongside all the letters that you've been publishing, you know. You're like a clingy ex. But Paul Brand on Twitter said that Michael Gove says the sponsorship scheme for Ukrainians will work like this. You don't need ties to the UK. There's no limit to the numbers. Live, work and use public services here for up to 3 years and 350 tax-free payment for hosts per month, but you have to name the refugee you'll sponsor. So Finlips, in the second part of her thread here, said, to recap, the Scottish Government is offering to welcome 3,000 refugees effective immediately and to assume full responsibility for safeguarding, housing and support. Housing being the operative word. Again, though, this is to fast track them here until such a time as people decide to let them into their homes. I think that whole fucking notion is just a retarded scheme that this is being suggested. Again, there's grounds to consider the fact there might be ulterior motives there as well. Some have hypothesised in that respect, but that's here nor there as far as I'm concerned for this video. The fact of the matter is, until such a time as people decide whether or not they're going to house them and get their £350 per month as, for doing so, they're going to be the Scottish Government's responsibility, and she's going to be finding housing for them, temporary or otherwise. Well, I beg the question, why the fuck can't you do something similar for your own people? Homelessness, etc., as I said, on the rise, but there's never any of that, because the grandstanding comes first here in Rainbow Unicorn Land. Some things never change. This fucking insufferable feminist boot never ceases to amaze me at just how irritating she gets as the years progress, and her lip thins even more so. And of course, many are in support, many are against what she's saying here on Twitter. This comment, for example, second down, I doubt many Ukrainians would want to travel further than they need to. Travelling all the way to the UK seems pointless, especially when there are many countries closer to their home. I know I would prefer France or Spain, you know? And of course, one of the videos I played at the start of this video, she's like, oh, that's a cop-out, passing the buck. All this shit, you know? The vast majority of them will probably go to countries nearby, whether it be Poland and whatnot, with the hope of returning to their country after the fact. It only seems to be, you know, they keep focusing on the term settlement, as if we're just going to house all these people, take them here, and it's going to be, inevitably, it's going to be permanent. I know that in this instance, with Michael Gove, he's referring to, you know, for 3 years, etc. But there's a hell of a lot of references to, you know, settling here, as opposed to, you know, temporary. But back in the day, it used to be a matter of fact, or not a matter of fact, but, you know, they would go nearby. It only seems to be the BAMEs these days where we just open the doors and let them all come in and they can stay for as long as they want. There's never any discussion about whether or not they can go home. You know, last time I checked, Syria wasn't exactly the war-torn nation that it once was, but yeah, they're still all here. Anyway, what else have we got? I'm ready and waiting with a place in my home in Edinburgh. Hope we can get this sorted soon, but I feel the government isn't fully signed up to this. Oh, fuck off. Just fuck off. I don't have the answer as to why the UK government seems to have been a bit more hesitant as opposed to other nations. But, you know, as I said, it's not like it's a matter of life or death for these people if they can't enter the UK. There's a body of water that separates us from the fucking continent, so that in and of itself should be enough to as a deterrent or an excuse for why it's been a bit slow. I know the response to that will be, oh, but my Republic of Ireland, well, fuck them. But, it goes on and on and on. 11 years now I've been on the council waiting list. 11 years and over 10,000 ahead of me in the queue. Your social housing is a face, Nikki, my dear. Presumably meant farce. Absolutely. The UK government are looking at around 100,000 refugees in total. Well, if that's true, there'll be a fucking large portion of them. And if Nicola Finlips had her way, all coming here. Potentially, maybe this is one of her deep-seated desires to see these people come here because it helps to ease that burden of the declining birth rates that she never fails. It never seems to address when it comes to incentivising or trying to rectify that. You know, it's just, as I say though, I think this. Temporary or otherwise, I still think that this headline here is on point, really. Refugees highlight Scotland's housing shortage, but that never seems to faze Nicola Finlips when it comes to demanding they all come here. Unlimited resources, unlimited space. Yeah. Just about to finish off with the 2015 article that never seems to get mentioned to her as a point of contention in terms of the fact she's a lying prick. But Nicola Sturgeon will take in a Ukrainian refugee if needed. So this came out the 13th of March. This is the Telegraph. Can't access the articles, right? But as the Scottish Daily Express puts it, it's a promise that seems to ring somewhat hollow after her previous Syrian claim. And what was that Syrian claim, in case anybody wasn't aware? In 2015 she actually promised, she came out alongside Gary Lineker and the likes to promise to give refugees a home here in Rainbow Unicorn Land, in her own home I should say. And it never did occur. So to this day there's still a room made up somewhere in Butte House that was all ready and designed, prepped and neat and nice for the Syrians that never came because she's a lying prick. Some things never change. But she still expects you to live amongst them. Anyway, peace.